South Africa has joined the world in celebrating International Women's History Month. Today's event comes as South Africa marks 30 years of democracy. However, women around the world are still facing many challenges. We now cross live to our international news editor, Sophie Mokoena, who's in Houghton in Johannesburg. Good afternoon, Sophie. There's a lot of achievement that has been done when it comes to what women in particular have been able to achieve by themselves. Take us through about the importance of today's gathering.
Well, it's quite important, as you pointed out, Diabo, that this month women around the world are celebrating International Women's History Month, looking back at different gains and perhaps challenges women faced around the world previously, and also now going forward in terms of what they need to do around issues that are of a challenge, but also celebrating the gains. And as you know that today, of course, then it coincides with Human Rights Day in South Africa, where also people are looking at whether women's rights in South Africa are regarded as human rights. And therefore, that is a big question when you think about women in the countryside who still have to walk long distances to ensure that they get wood to make fire, to cook, but also to get water because of water challenges. In the other areas, in the suburb or in the urban areas, you also have challenges, particularly young women who are educated but don't have work. And therefore, these are some of the challenges. Globally, you look at the current conflict in Ukraine, women there struggling. You look at the conflict in the Middle East, who can really forget those visuals coming from Gaza and Rafah, women in particular who are being killed, and children. When you come to the continent, you have a similar situation in the DRC. In Sudan, women are being killed, are being raped, their rights are being violated, and therefore there's a lot that still needs to be done globally to address challenges facing women. And also when you look at the United Nations, you'd recall that on the 21st of March 1960, the Sharpeville massacre, the UN decided that it will observe this day as part of International Day to fight racism and all forms of discrimination and oppression. And women are still oppressed around the world.
Fewer women remain at leadership positions, particularly when you look at JSE-listed companies. In fact, I think it's about only 3% of women that are heading JSE-listed companies. I know that you had an opportunity to speak to influential women like Pensi Tlakula, who was with the IEC back then. What was her thoughts about women taking leadership position with regards to big companies or in the economy itself?
Well, you touched on a very crucial issue, because if women are not economically empowered, they will always be oppressed, because then they will depend on people to assist them, particularly for survival. You'd recall that as the world was celebrating International Women's Day, at the JSC, you saw women talking about their experiences. Much as there's a lot to celebrate, but there's a lot that needs to be done. I spoke to Dr. Precious Muloi Motsepe on that day, and she touched on the importance of empowering women, even talking about how the foundation is working hard to ensure that they empower women, young women, and particularly those who are still at school, and also those who are at institutions of higher learning in relation to the STEM subjects, because that's where you need to empower women so that they can also use that kind of knowledge and skills to empower themselves economically. And therefore, when you talk about Advocate Pensi Tlakula, yes, I spoke to her. You know that she was one of the commissioners during the dawn of democracy of the Human Rights Commission, and therefore issues that are related to human rights. And also I spoke to her a question around her role. You'd recall that at some point in time she was a CEO of the Electoral Commission in South Africa, and she became the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. As we speak now, she's part of the committee, the UN committee, assisting the UN General Secretary, the UN Secretary General on the issues related to fighting racism around the world. And also she's leading an institution that is looking at issues that are related to access to information, and as part of the regulatory processes in South Africa, talking about access to internet that can empower women, but also concerns that it can be abused during elections. And therefore women are saying, yes, we've made gains, but a lot still needs to be done. And I think Advocate Pensi Tlakula even went as far as saying that women have regressed in South Africa when you look at the leadership, political level, because when you look at political parties in South Africa who will be contesting elections, when you look at women who are leaders of political parties, for now I know only two women who are going to be on the ballot representing their political parties, and therefore that speaks to what's we still have to do. Yes, in Parliament we've made strides, and countries such as Rwanda also, but leading the political space, which can lead to a situation where we can talk about a woman president in South Africa, it looks like we are still far from that. But when you look at a country such as Namibia, as we speak, the governing party, SWAPO, their candidate for the 2024 elections in December is a woman. She is currently the vice president of SWAPO. She is the vice president of the country. And when I spoke to the president of Namibia this week, he pointed out that they are going to rally behind her to ensure that they win elections. So if she is able to win elections, we'll have two women in the SADC region when you look at Tanzania as well. But a lot still needs to be done, Diabo, around the world. I mean, you look at the situation in the Middle East, how many women are leading in the Middle East, but the victims and the people who are suffering most are women. And even at workplace, in the media space, we cannot forget our own industry. Black African women, how many are they who are really occupying high positions? So it's a challenge in all sectors of society, in South Africa, in the region SADC, around the world, and on the continent.
Yeah. Sophie, I'm glad that you touched on the issue of media, because you have been in the media and in newsroom for over 30 years and more. How have you seen the role of women evolve in the newsroom since you were a young reporter, a young producer back then?
As I work towards my way out, I think it has been a thorny one. It has been a difficult one, particularly for Black African women. I mean, when you look at the structures right now, very few are really occupying senior positions. It has been a struggle, and it is no surprise because it is quite an important sector. It is a sector that kind of shape or create or set the agenda, and therefore anything that is empowering women will always struggle to occupy those spaces. But we've done a lot, and we have made gains here and there. That's why you have women editors today, particularly the young generation. With us, it was a difficult one because it was almost like a triple oppression, and therefore you had to push those three gates to get in, and it wasn't easy, and it was not going to be easy. But the younger generation, they are doing very, very well in different media houses, but we still have a long way to go, particularly in relation to ownership of media by women in South Africa, on the continent, and around the world. Look at the big companies globally. that in the media space, how many women are there? I can't even remember.